So let's move on to the next step. So next step in this particular part is very important. Now since we have deployed our ESX host 01 and 02, now we need to deploy our VCSA, Virtual Center Server Appliance. Okay, vCenter Server Appliance 8.0 ISO. From the official VMware site we need to download it, and then we will install now our VCSA, Virtual Center Server, as a virtual machine. Okay, so I have already downloaded it, so we need to mount it on our DC system. So I'm coming back to my DC system, and let me minimize this. I will go back to my VMware workstation console, and here on DC system we need to map our VCSA, Virtual Center Server Appliance ISO. So I will go back here, and this is the ISO. Okay, VCSA all. This is the ISO I need to map. So I will say open and say OK over here. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. So next step is through Win 2022 DC system, Windows Explorer, browse the following path. So D drive, VCSA UI installer, and Win32. Okay, so go back here. Let's minimize this as of now. And in the Explorer we have mapped this particular ISO, right? So what is the path over here? D VCSA UI installer Win32. So VCSA UI installer Win32. Okay, and next is we need to execute installer.exe. Okay, installer.exe. Now before we will start the installation, let me explain you what we are exactly doing. So I will minimize this. I will come back to my desktop, and let me open our lab setup one more time. So here we have finished up to this part. We have installed our DC, we have installed our ESX host 01 and 02. All those are running as in virtual machines through our VMware workstation. Now what we are doing is we are installing our vCenterServer as a nested VM on ESX host 01. Okay, unlike most of the engineers are doing, they are installing vCenterServer as a fourth VM over here, but I'm not doing that because I have faced a lot of errors while doing that. It is not installing, it is installing up to 85% and then giving the error that not all the services are responding and all those things. So what I have found a way, and before that also, before those errors also, we have to make a lot of changes to our configuration files and all, so you don't have to do all those things. So what I have found the way is I'm installing vCenterServer as a nested VM through ESX host 01. Okay, so let's go back here, and we have run this installer.exe, right? So let's see what could be our next step. Installer.exe we have already run, right? So next step is through vCenter 8 installer console, click on install. So I will click on install. Remember, we have mapped our ISO on our Windows 2022 DCVM. Okay. Next step is on introduction page, stage 1, deploy vCenterServer, click next. So here it is like giving you a kind of an introduction page that what you are doing. This is a stage 1, deploy vCenterServer. So I will say next. Next is we need to accept the end user license agreement and click next. So I will say I accept, next. Next is we need to give the vCenterServer deployment target. That means on which particular ESX host we are deploying our vCenterServer as a virtual machine. Okay, so we need to give the ESX host 01's parameter over here. Okay, try to understand what I'm doing over here. ESX host or vCenterServer name which can hold the deployment of our vCenterServer. Okay, so I'm just giving the IP of ESX host 01. What is the IP? 192.168.1.7. Okay, and then username will be root and password will be our root password for that ESX host. Okay, so this is done. Now I will say next. So here I have just put in one note. We are deploying vCenterServer 8 on ESX host 01 as a nested VM, thus providing ESX host 01 VM's target parameters. I have just explained you the same thing. Okay. Now next is it will give some certificate warning. We just need to click on yes for this to accept the certificate warning. I will say yes. It will validate. By the time it is validating, I will come back to my next step. So next step is we need to provide the appropriate vCenter server's virtual machine name and root password and click next. So here VM name you can give whatever you want to, but as of now I'm just keeping a default one and I'm setting the root password for vCenterServer. Okay. So this is a root password for my vCenterServer. I will say next. So next part is we need to select the appropriate vCenterServer deployment size and click next. Now here you can see many deployment sizes are available: tiny, small, medium, large, X large. So depending upon your production environment you can choose whichever size is suitable for your infra. So it is giving you the bifurcation over here that the tiny one will support two virtual CPUs, memory will be 14 GB, storage will be 579 GB, thin provision, and then hosts means ESX host it can support up to 10 and VMs up to 100 VMs can be managed through tiny one. Then small, which will be much a bit larger than tiny. Then these are the parameters, and X large will be like this ones up to 35,000 VMs. Okay, so as of now for this lab setup the tiny one is okay for us, so I'm just keeping the tiny one at a 2 virtual CPU, 14 GB and 10 hosts. We are not having 10 hosts also, we are having only 2 hosts, so that's fine. And I will say next. So next is select appropriate data store on ESX host 01 to install vCenterServer 8 nested VM plus enable thin disk mode option and click next. Now here we have already configured our data store, VMFS data store. So it is asking us that whether you want to install your vCenter VM on this data store only, right? So if you are having multiple data stores, it will show you all the available data stores. But as of now, we are having only one data store. So it is showing only that one. And here one important option we need to select, enable thin disk mode, right? So why thin disk mode? If you remember, if I'm going back over here, the storage required for this tiny vCenter server version is 579 GB. But if I am not enabling this, it will immediately take up my data store space of 579 GB. And if the data store is not having that much capacity, it will give an error. Okay, so as of now, we don't have that much space either. So what I'm doing is enable thin mode. Thin mode means it will take only that much space which is required at that particular time, and it will grow up to the maximum size of 579 GB, whatever the tiny version it is required. I hope I'm clear. It's the same thing in Hyper-V also, your static disk and dynamic disk, right? So same thing over here, thin disk and thick disk. Thin means it will take only that much space which is required for installation or for storing very basic files, and then it will grow accordingly. So I'm just enabling this option and I will say next. Next is we need to now give the network setting. So enter the appropriate network configuration values as shown in sideline figure and click next. So what is the parameter over here? So we need to choose the IP version as IP4, IP assignment as static, and then FQDN, then IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, DNS server, right? So I will come back here. So network will be VM network, that's fine. IP version will be IP4, that's fine. IP assignment static, that's fine. FQDN. So if you remember, we have created our DNS records in the previous part, right? So I think it is vCenterServer, right? vCenterServer dot esx lab dot local, right? So this will be our FQDN. If you still are not sure which FQDN you need to give, we will just reconfirm it through server manager. Go to the tools, DNS. This is why this particular step was very important, right? So see over here, this particular host record we have already created, right? vCenterServer. Double clicking on it and just copying it so that it should not be any mistake, not even a typo mistake or something like that. Okay, close this, and now paste it over here. Okay, then the IP address, so 192.168.1.25. okay, and then your subnet mask, let me just re-verify. Yes, 192.168.1.25, and the subnet mask is a default one. Okay, default gateway 192.168, our DC gateway 1.100, DNS server, copy, paste. Okay, HTTP and HTTPS, this is fine. And now I will say next. So it will validate our network setting, and now on a ready to complete stage 1. Okay, So review all the vCenter server installation options and click finish. So we are now ready to deploy our vCenter server as a nested VM. So all the options have been verified. Target ESX host is our ESX host 01, that's IP. VM name will be VMware vCenter server, that's fine. Deployment size tiny, storage size default 579 GB something. Then data store and disk mode VMFS DS thin, this is very important, okay, otherwise it will take up your whole disk space. Network VM network IP4 192.168.1.25. Host name, that is FQDN vCenterServer.esxlab.local. Subnet mask, default gateway 1.100, DNS 1.100, HTTP 80, HTTPS 443. Okay, so everything looks fine. Why I'm repeating all those things in detail? Because there are many instances that your vCenter server installation will fail if you are not configuring all those settings correctly. And finally I will say finish. Now it will start to install our stage 1 deploy vCenter server. Okay, so we need to monitor the stage 1 of vCenter server deployment. So it has started, it will take some time, so I'm just pausing this video as of now. Once this is completed, I'm coming back to you with the next step. So our vCenter server stage 1 of deployment is about to complete. It is showing 91%. Let's wait for some more time. So our stage 1 of deploy vCenter server is completed. Now it is asking us to click on continue. Okay, so let's go back to our PPT first. So as I said, click continue upon completion of stage 1 of vCenter server 8 deployment. Okay, so it is showing you have successfully deployed the vCenter server. Okay, I will say continue over here. Now it is loading stage 2. Okay, so by the time it is loading, let's go back to our PPT. Now next step on stage 2 setup vCenter server, click next. So it is now showing that stage 1 is completed, and now stage 2, I will say next. Okay. So in the next step, it is asking us for time synchronization mode and SSH access. So we need to enable both the options. Okay, so what I'm doing is make it synchronize time with ESX host, and then SSH access, which is currently deactivated, I will make it activated. Okay, why do we require both these options? I'm just explaining you. Time synchronization means whatever the time currently ESX host is holding, it will synchronize to that one. If you remember, we have set our ESX host NTP timing to the local Win 2022 DC system, so that everything will be in sync. Okay, that is the first requirement. Second requirement is SSH. Now SSH is required to make any configuration changes through command line. So we will be using that SSH for further steps for configuring our root password or resetting our administrator password and all. So that's why I'm just enabling SSH access. And now I will say next. By the time it is loading, let's move on to the next step. Next is SSO configuration. So in SSO configuration, we need to give the single sign-on administrator username and password over here. The SSO is one of the prerequisite for your vSphere vCenter server. Okay, so I'm coming back here. and you can see over here. Here we need to just give the single sign-on domain name, which is a default one, is vSphere.local. Okay, so here I am typing. You can see it is already showing in a dehighlighted mode, but I am just typing it. And now I am giving the administrator password. Okay, so now we have given the by default SSO domain name, and then username and password, administrator and password. If you are having any existing SSO domain, you can use it over here, but we don't have as of now. And I will say next. Next step is we need to choose the option to join to the CIEP page, or if you don't want to join, you can deselect that option. So as of now, I'm deselecting this customer enhance program. So I don't want to join as of now, so I will say I will deselect this and I will say next. And now on ready to complete page, I just need to click finish, review all options and click finish. Okay, so let's review these options one more time. We have given the static IP, IP4 version, then 192.168.1.25, subnet mask is 24-bit, then our gateway is 192.168.1.100, DNS is also same 192.168.1.100. Time synchronization mode, we are using synchronize with the ESX host parameter. SSH access is activated. SSO details we have filled in. Okay, and CIP we don't want to join as of now. I will say finish. So it will give us a warning that you will not be able to pause or stop the install from completing once it started. So click OK to continue or cancel to stop. So we will click on OK. Now this process cannot be stopped as highlighted in the warning thing. So now it is installing our vCenterServer in stage 2, and in this particular step I was getting a lot of errors if I am installing vCenterServer as a fourth VM. Okay, we are currently installing it as a nested VM. Okay, so it should go through. Let's see. So it will take some time to complete. I'm just pausing this video. Once this is completed, I'll come back to you with the next step. So the installation is going on. By the time we will move on to our next step. So we're currently monitoring the stage 2 of vCenterServer deployment. So you can see over here it is starting a lot of different services, and up to 80-85% mark it is going smooth, and then it was giving error if I am installing my vCenterServer as a fourth VM. But now we are installing it as a nested VM. Again and again repeating, if you want to avoid all those errors, then opt for nested VM. This is my recommendation. As per your best of technical abilities, you can choose whatever option you want to. Now you can see this stage 2, install stage 2 of vCenter deployment is completed successfully. Okay, so let's go back to our PPT. So we need to close this wizard once this stage 2 gets completed. Okay, And before closing this, we will note down our getting started page or the vCenter access URL over here, right? So what I will do is I will say close over here and close this. Now in the next part we will see how to open our vCenter server, how to access it through our URL, and then how to configure it for the first use, how to reset its password and all those things.